My name is Father Tim MacDonald. I'm the pastor at Queen of the Miraculous Meadow Catholic Church in Jackson, Michigan, and also the vicar of Jackson and the vicar general of the Diocese of Lansing. I also have the honor of serving as the parish administrator of St. Catherine Labouré in Concord. I am the youngest of 6 children. The interesting thing about that is of those 6 children, 3 of them are priests. I serve here in the Diocese of Lansing. My oldest brother, Father Eben MacDonald, is the pastor of St. Cyril of Jerusalem Catholic Church in Los Angeles, California. And the brother next older to me in line in the family, Father Adam MacDonald, is a missionary with the Society of the Divine Word. He's a vocation director. He has worked in Japan and the Philippines, and now he travels all over America trying to encourage more young people to consider a vocation to the missionary life. We were born and raised in Flint. People say, how did you get 3 priests in the family? And our standard answer is, we thought there was something in the water. Now we know that we were right. My parents already had 3 children in 1966 when they arrived in Flint. And Flint today is a city of blight and crime and drugs and urban decline. But in 1966, when my parents moved, there was a thriving metropolis, over 200,000 people. Flint had been voted in 1958 to be the best place in America to live. Sadly, 30 years later, perhaps due to my family's influence, it was rated the worst. It had fallen 300 spots on the Money Magazine list of America's safest cities. My mother was born in Cincinnati. My father was born in Silver Spring, Maryland. Both of their families eventually ended up in Columbus, our neighbors to the south. My mother is older than my father, and after she finished at the St. Joseph Academy, which no longer exists, an all-girls school, she was the bookkeeper for the bishop of the Diocese of Columbus at that time, Bishop Thomas J. Issenman. Besides keeping the books for the bishop's office, he also instructed her to start a youth group, a mission club, that was to raise money for the education of priests in far-off Goa, India. The rule for her group was every time somebody came, they had to bring somebody new with them. At that time, my father Larry was attending St. Charles Preparatory School, also in Columbus. That's an all-boys school that still exists today. And 2 of his friends were fighting over him to make him be their new recruit for the mission club meeting. Well, my father knew he was going to end up attending, and my mother quickly forgot about the plight of seminarians and priests in Goa, India, because she only had eyes for Larry MacDonald. When it was time for me to discern in Flint Central High School what I was going to do for college, I really wasn't looking at anything. And eventually, the guidance counselor called me to his office and said, everyone else in the top of the class has made several college visits, and you've made none. Looking back, I think that's because I wasn't considering all the options. We had just received a new pastor in our parish. I didn't know him from Adam, and he didn't know me either. Back somewhere in the depths of my heart, I was thinking, could God be calling me to be a priest? Because when compared to events at school and events at church, I would always sacrifice school events in order to be involved in the church. Figuring I needed to carry this forward, I eventually wrote a 3-page, single-spaced letter to this new priest to introduce myself and tell him about my vocation, and the rest is history. I was then sent off right after high school to the St. John Vianney College Seminary on the campus of the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota. And those were 4 of some of the best years of my life. Having been educated in the public schools and relying on Sunday school for my religious education, I really felt I had a lot of catching up to do. But being surrounded by so many other faithful men who wanted to devote their lives to Christ, to prayer, to the church, and the service of God's people really opened my eyes. And that was an experience I will never forget. Anyone that was going into graduate school, into major theology that year, was going to do so in Rome. I found this out on very short notice. In a span of weeks, I had to leave everything behind to go learn Italian in New York City because all of the classes in Rome were going to be taught in Italian. I had studied a little bit of French in high school. I wasn't very good at speaking English, and all of a sudden I was going to be thrust into a foreign culture, learning in a foreign language. It took a lot of faith on my part to trust in the Lord, looking back to the apostles who were willing to step out of the boat and follow Jesus wherever he led them. But those 4 years in Rome, 1996 to 2000, I felt like I was entering Christian history. During that time, I had the opportunity to serve Mass for the late Pope John Paul II. I had the chance to go on a mission trip to Calcutta, India, and to give Holy Communion to Mother Teresa of Calcutta, now also a saint, just weeks before her death. By the age of 26, I had visited 29 different countries. I really felt that I had seen the world and experienced the Catholic Church in every corner of it on many different continents, and it only strengthened my vocation. It was time to be ordained in the Jubilee year 2000, and I took part in my first assignment as a parochial vicar at St. Gerard Church in Lansing, serving under the now retired Father John Klein, who consequently was the priest that in my youth heard my first confession. There, I cut my teeth in the priesthood, learning to do anointings, weddings, funerals, lots of counseling appointments, and spending a great deal of time with the children in the school. After only 2 years of priest, we went through a span of 6 weeks where several priests passed away under a variety of different circumstances across the diocese. I saw the writing on the wall and began to figure that my days as a baby priest were soon to come to an end. And sure enough, when I attended the funeral of Father Ray Rademacher at Most Holy Trinity in Fowler, 25 miles north of Lansing, I found out that my life indeed was also about to change. It was immediately after the funeral, Bishop Mengling called me to him on the street in front of the church, pointed at the church and said there's no one else. And thus it was a few months later, at the age of 28, I became a pastor for the first time. During my time at Most Holy Trinity in Fowler, Bishop Mengling approached me again to send me back to Rome to finish a licentiate degree, the equivalent of a Master's of Divinity in the United States. It was, however, during that time that I was very blessed to be present in Rome for the funeral of Pope John Paul II and the election of Pope Benedict XVI, who formerly was Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger. I had a great affection for Cardinal Ratzinger because when I was a seminarian studying in Rome, it was he who ordained me and my class as transitional deacons in the Catholic Church on the Feast of Our Lady of the Rosary, October the 7th, 1999. To have the man who placed his hands on my head for the laying on of hands that brought me into the celibate state and into the clerical life was a great blessing to see that he was now going to be the 265th Bishop of Rome and successor of Peter. When I returned to Fowler, my time was short. We restored the church from top to bottom to honor the parish's 125th anniversary, and then the bishop called again. It was time to take on a difficult assignment at Holy Redeemer Catholic Church in Burton, just outside of my native hometown of Flint. There, I was facing a massive debt, a failing school, and a real crisis within the parish community. It was a time of great healing, although my time there was very brief, and sadly, the school, which had once been the largest in the Diocese of Lansing, did come to an end. After only 3 years in that parish assignment, there was a new bishop, Earl Boyer, still my boss today. And Bishop Boyer told me that I was needed here in Jackson, here at Queen of the Miraculous Medal, but also at Our Lady of Fatima and Michigan Center. And therefore, at the age of 36 in 2010, I moved to Jackson, where I have now been for the last 12 and a half years. I co-pastored Queens and Our Lady of Fatima for 8 years, and at Fatima we had the privilege of opening a brand new church and repurposing the old church to become the parish offices. And here at Queens, we've overseen a massive capital campaign to add a handicapped entrance, an elevator to our parish offices, a new roof on the rectory, a new garage storage area and food pantry to feed the hungry. We redid the school roof, put in a new church parking lot, and most importantly, we were able to build Vincentian Hall underneath the church here at Queens, where for the first time in the church's nearly 80-year history, we were able to host funeral dinners and parish functions right on site without sending people out of the church building. For the first 8 of my 12 years here at Queens, I had parochial vicars assigned to me, 3 newly ordained priests, and what goes around comes around, because I remember what it was like to be a parochial vicar serving under a pastor, and certainly I tried to be more gentle with them, having remembered what it was like to be in their position. It was in 2014 that the bishop made me the vicar of Jackson and asked me also to serve as his vicar general, which literally means I'm like the vice president or the second in command of the diocese. And if he is ever incapacitated, I would assume control of the Diocese of Lansing until such time as the Vatican or the Apostolic Nuncio in Washington, D.C. was able to name an apostolic administrator to govern in his place. One of the favorite things I enjoy about being a priest is simply accompanying people in the highs and lows of their lives, the peaks and the valleys, the great moments and the saddest moments. The priest is there when babies are born and being baptized. The priest is there when people's children are getting prepared for marriage. The priest is there when families are broken or when tragedy has struck. We're there to bury the dead and to preach about the hope of the resurrection. Back when I was the seminary and preparing for the priesthood, I could never have guessed the many different things that I would be asked to do, but I always feel that the Lord provides. And if I have my will in cooperation with His grace, then we can do small things with great love. One of my favorite quotes of St. Mother Teresa of Calcutta. It is my hope going forward with these podcasts that we will spend time together in conversation, being able to enlighten you about the riches of our Catholic faith, the Catholic Mass, and our shared beliefs with other Christians, and our hope for people that do not know God, that they might find Him, especially in this modern age in the world of technology, where so many people might visit us online or hear us speaking on the internet before they ever approach us near the altar at the church. I hope that you will also accompany us on this journey as we break open God's Word and the teachings of the Church and learn more about Catholicism in general, its history, its structures, and the rich traditions that accompany us on our journey to the kingdom of heaven. It's been my honor and privilege to welcome you into my home today and to speak to you, and I hope that you'll catch up with us again on one of the many different platforms on which we send out these podcasts. Until we meet again, God bless you, God keep you, and may His face always shine upon you. This is Father Tim MacDonald signing off and wishing you a miraculous day.